Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of the Liberia History Channel on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Last week, we were talking about the lost artifacts of the north and central region of Liberia. Today, we're going to continue slightly in that same vein to discuss ancient crafts, the vanishing artistic traditions of Liberia. I repeat that, ancient crafts, the vanishing, the disappearing artistic traditions of Liberia. Let me welcome our presenter, Carl Pambule. Welcome, Carl.
Thanks, Dennis. It's always my pleasure to be here to discuss our history, our culture, and all these beautiful things that make us incredibly proud to be Liberian.
And let me welcome all our viewers from across the globe. If you have not already done so, please invite a friend. It's going to be very, very exciting. I mean, I was watching a program. They say Grebo Gospel in Liberia, Grebo Gospel Association, and they had they had a Grebo and they were having this program, and I saw their hair tie almost like Nigerian. I saw different things, and then they couldn't even speak Grebo. They were all speaking English. So I said, and I was waiting for that. I said, oh, I think Grebo people coming together, they're going to speak Grebo and do the program in Grebo, but it was all English. Ancient crafts, the vanishing artistic traditions of Liberia. If you have not done so, please welcome and invite a friend, and let's talk about these vanishing traditions. And you will really like it. The ancient crafts, the vanishing trades, and artistic traditions of Liberia. Carl, just a recap, last week we're discussing these lost artifacts. We said they are not lost. We know where they are, except that they are not in the country. And
they're lost to us. They're lost to us, meaning that they're not in our possession.
Right.
We know where some of them are. We don't know where all of our things are. But even the ones that we know their locations, those things are still lost to us.
And so, just a brief summary, and let's segue into this one and see, and the connection. That's where I want us to start.
So the connection is, for me, the fact that a lot of these things were given away a very long time ago. Many of these things were removed, around 100 years ago or so. And we have not only did our forefathers either give things away or allow things to be taken, or things were taken by force or by trickery, um, but even the passing down of the traditions has not been something that we've done very well. We haven't done a very good job of, you know, preserving our very ancient ways of doing things. It doesn't mean that you cannot modernize, but let me give you an example. Here in the United States, young children will join the Boy Scouts. They'll learn how to tie knots and go out in the woods and be able to survive and make a fire without a match or without a lighter. You know, they learn these ancient things just as kind of a homage to the past. And it helps to build character and kind of keep these traditions alive. So I'm not in any way saying that we need to go back and live like our ancestors, but there are a lot of very, important traditional crafts, techniques, engineering feats, that we should preserve. They're of value. They're of value to us collectively as a people, and in some cases, there are of international and they're of international value. We can't just throw everything away and adapt, Western or modernity. And actually, nobody does that. I mean, you go to Asia, there's people still making samurai swords in Japan as they were done 1,000 years ago. And there's a reason for that. Human beings like to preserve culture. I want to also add that many of these ancient crafts we're going to be looking at date back over 800, 1,200 years and more. So the techniques, some of which go back 5,000 or 6,000 years. And the preservation of the way of doing things wasn't because people couldn't be innovative and change them, but there was some reverence paid to the way that things were done in a most traditional sense. So I think if there are, and I believe there are, with some of these things, people who still know how to do these. And, I think it would be great to even incorporate some of this into our educational curriculum. How do you tie this kind of knot? How do you set this kind of trap? When I was growing up, there were a lot of things that were incorporated in our educational curriculum that were there to help build character and give us a sense of grounding in the history. So we learned how to do a lot of Native American, not a lot, but some Native American, things, tying certain types of knots. We learned about the different types of architecture that Indigenous Americans built. We learned about the different types of pottery and all of these things. It was infused into the U.S. education system in elementary school when I was growing up. So it would be beautiful if through our education system, some of these things were preserved just so that they're not forgotten.
Is that what conservatism is?
So yes, being conservative depends on your perspective. What I was, when people say they're conservative, I said, what are you trying to conserve? Mm-hmm. I'm an African conservative. I'm trying to conserve African traditions and culture. You can be a conservative racist, which you want to conserve white privilege and your dominion over other people, Black and brown people. You could be a conservative and you want to bring back the old way where you had free labor and you could own human beings. The good old days when Black people couldn't move into your neighborhood. So it depends. I mean, conservative is a term politically that can mean fascism. But yes, as an African, when I say I'm conserving something, it's definitely it's conserving culture and history.
And talking about conserving culture and history, let's look at our ancient crafts, the vanishing trades and artistic traditions of Liberia.
Yeah. So this young man, Dennis, do you know what he's making with this compact? What do you know what he's making?
It's Kinja call. This is I made this. Okay. The young man is as someone born behind God's back. I learned to make this too. This Kinja.
So you're pretty sure you know how to do it, Dennis?
This is easy. If we caught palm nuts, where we put it to bring it home.
Yeah. So I would want to know how many people alive in Liberia today. What our population, majority of the people in the country are under the age of 35. I want to know how many of them can actually do this and even would recognize that. You have an advantage in that you grew up in a rural area when you were very young, so you were able to pick up a lot of things that many
Right.
people, at
And,
least, probably more than half of the population doesn't have that privilege.
and Carl, what happened also is people in Monrovia today, they don't even
Mhm.
know how I know about it. It's because even after I left from there at the age of what, 14 or 13, I've been taking deep interest in them. And that's how I know these things, because a lot of people now they don't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Being interested in something too. You can live in a rural area and not be interested in these things, and you won't
Yeah.
learn it, right? Because
Right.
nobody's really compelled anymore.
No.
Nobody's really compelled to learn these traditions. So yeah, that kinja, that these are our traditional carrying apparatuses, backpacks. We use them to carry loads, and the art of making kinja is ancient, ancient. So some anthropologists, because we find this among a lot of the people of the rainforest, very, very archaic people. So they're thinking that this goes back 10,000 or more years, this exact way of doing it, which I think is just profound. That kind of preservation of history through technique, through the preservation of technique. So you're passing on what your ancestors did. And one of the things that we do in a lot of our cultures in West Africa with these things, because of the way we educate our ourselves and the way we set up our schools, it almost frowns against changing
Yeah.
traditional methodology. And that can be positive, and some people say it can be negative. But the positive aspects of it is it's living history. It's a living preservation of the handwork of your ancestors. And you can go back 5, 6, 10,000 years and sit with the most ancient people, and you will recognize the technique that they're using. That for me is profound.
And Carl, I mean, what would be the importance, and I'm asking this question, I know the answer already, of learning this in school? I mean, I'm just looking at this, I'm like, okay, why we not at least, even if we can show a picture, even if we don't do it, so
Mhm.
why would it be important for us to learn it growing up? Is it because we no longer need it? That's why we've forgotten it in the cities, or why?
It's part Education is not, people have this idea that education is all about getting job. The children need to learn trade. They need to learn how to go and work, for the mines, and they need to learn how to be nurses, which is absolutely true. But the human mind has the capacity to know many things. And education is not only about learning trades, it's also about learning about oneself, giving
Yeah.
people a sense of culture and understanding and belonging. Education is about enlightening people, connecting people with the past, giving people the esteem to innovate the future. So you can completely have an education system that cuts people off from their roots. It is dangerous, really.
Yeah.
And I don't see any competent governments anywhere in the world that has an education system that does not incorporate people's traditions and people's history.
But
Um,
where does that come from among us?
in a way. Say that
Where,
again.
where do- I said, where does that come from? That we don't want to learn about ourselves.
I don't know that people don't want to learn about themselves. I think that, when you outsource your education system to people who don't respect you, people who just want to get laborers for their extractive industries, they don't want to build well-rounded, complex thinking human beings. They just want to, have people who have basic literacy, can
Yeah.
add and subtract and do their work. So we have people say, oh, we need to outsource the university, like, bro, to Indians. We need to outsource our education system. This is what this is what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
It's not responsible governance. The purpose of education is not only for people to be able to read and do work on plantations and mines and mining, uh, sites and things like that. It's also for them to be able to solve problems and develop their country and advance the cause of their people. So education is about creating thinking people who are
Yeah.
well-rounded and grounded in their own history. It's very important. So we need to really shift that paradigm and think about how we're fostering the self-esteem or destroying the self-esteem of our young people by not connecting them to the dignity of their heritage.
Yeah. Because what's the purpose of education if you are not trained to solve the problem around you, right?
Exactly.
So
You
you are training people.
just there to work in other people's
Yeah.
industries. That's crazy to me. But
Mm.
that's been the mindset for quite some time among us. So Kinja, and I this is this is actually a photograph from 1928. So we're talking about, what is that, 96 years ago, of a couple of different type of carrying apparatus or frames or apparatuses that were used to tow loads. We have talked on this show about long distance trade. We have talked on this show about people carrying um, loads across the savannah, the Sahels of West Africa, from the Guinea forest region, Guinea Forestier, all the way to what is now Senegambia, and then eastward to northern Burkina Faso and all these areas. We had trade routes that expanded great distances. Kinjas were some of the apparatuses that were used for people to tow things like grain, rice, gold, ivory, and so on, and other valuable things from the forest, cola nuts, and so on, and the list goes on and on. Later on, when we shifted trade toward the coast with the coming of the Europeans, these Kenja were also used in the same manner to take things towards the coast. It's very profound history, spanning back as long as civilization itself. I think it's absolutely amazing that they preserve the craft in such a way that in as recently as 1928, as recently as 96 years ago, we're able to look at, take a glimpse into history, quite ancient history, and see things that are made out of plant fibers that would not have been able to be, preserved in the damp climate for 800 years. But because they continue the same system of doing things, we're able to see exactly what these things look like. And that, for me, is amazing.
Mm. So Kinja is the simplest form
Hmm.
of it's loop up the end of a palm frond, the leaflets of which are braided together along the sides. I mean, I feel like making one now. Just looking at it.
So yeah, these men are Arkbe men, and very young men, clearly. Um, and these are the carrying apparatuses that they created. Now, Kenya has different names in different dialects for these things, but I think we go with for the most part, what the Ve and Ogola people call it. Traditionally, in all of West Africa, I mean, all of Liberia, even in the eastern part of our country, we also call it, by the Gola Vai name.
So Kinja is a Gola by name.
Yes, it's in both Gola and Vai. Is my
Yeah.
understanding.
Because in my hometown we don't call it Kinja.
What do they call it in Gribble?
Krabwe.
Uh-huh.
It's like a bush load.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In
So
Gola and Vai, the apparatus itself is what has the name, not the load. So
yeah,
even when it's empty, it's the apparatus itself.
yeah, and that's how we.
So these photos are from 1928. Otherwise, I will tell you when they are from a different time period. Here again are 3 men carrying loads. Laborers in the interior. These men are also of the Pela ethnic group.
Fantastic.
Here again is another example. These are monomen in the area around Ganta. And I want you to take note of something. This is another type of very old and ancient craft that we really don't see it, people doing anymore. Look at the road, Dennis, that they're standing on.
Yeah.
Do you see how well engineered this road is? And there's a lot of, we can do another show just talking about roads, what we call footpaths. These are roads, these aren't just paths. And look how well kept they were. The tradition in the West and the North, and I also believe in the East, which I haven't studied it as much there, but I don't see why it would be any different, is that every clan is responsible for keeping the road perfect in their controlled territory.
Yeah.
So you can't be walking through Dennis Jah's controlled territory, and then and the road is beautiful and neat like this, and you get to call territory, it's narrow and there's trees and bushes all over the place. It was a taboo. So everyone took pride in how neat the road was. This is something that is lost. You talk about vanishing crafts and traditions. We had walkability, meaning people were able to safely get from one town to another without having to worry about being hit by a car or having some other danger, because they brushed the bush back. That if you even saw, you're walking in the day, if you even saw an animal or something that was dangerous, your vantage point was quite far, right? Today in Liberia, we have a bigger population that doesn't seem to think that they're responsible to create avenues for them to be able to get themselves from one point to another like their grandparents and great-grandparents did. So they will leave the town, come out on the road. Even small children will come out on a road where people are driving 60, 70 miles an hour and walk with their backs to traffic, as opposed to the communities getting together and saying, we're going to put road networks within the communities, from this town to the school, from this town to the farm, so that people don't have to walk on the highway. It's something that everyone, let the government do it. Well, the government isn't doing it. The government didn't do it back then. People did it for themselves. So talk about lost crafts. There's also this lost civic responsibility, in being able to produce for yourself a safe way to get from one place to another. We no longer have this in Liberia. Let somebody please prove me wrong, but I've traveled the length and breadth of that country and I've not seen anything as beautiful as this. This is what we call a lost craft for sure.
Because right now we want government to do it. Government fill our lives, so everything is government.
Yeah. But look at the straight lines and the width of the road and how they make sure that the grass is kept, the bushes are kept way back. It's amazing.
And they are able to walk even side by side instead of single file because the road is broad.
Yeah, and this was something that was very normal in the northern Western territories. This width and this type of style of doing roads.
Is it also because of the street or maybe the leadership, right? Because these places were controlled by kings.
Yes, exactly.
And so they would say you have to do this.
Yeah, so in a centralized, that's why I said, I'm not 100% certain about the eastern part of the country, but in the highly stratified, socially stratified and centralized environment of the West and the northern parts of Liberia, people I call our people the obedient ones. They are the obedient ones. They took orders, they took instructions, and they did what they were told. So one of the things that we don't really talk about a lot is the fact that we've been doing ironworking in Liberia. We're some of the oldest ironworking people in the world. We've been smelting iron and smelting brass and all of these things since the Bronze Age. We are not, new to this. So these technologies are very, very old among our people. And in fact, when the Europeans would trade with us in the 1500s, one of the things that they would trade would be smelted iron bars. They would come and purchase bars of iron that we had smelted and formed into uniform weighted, measurements, and though that would be a medium of exchange. Today, we don't sell iron bars to ArcelorMittal or any of these places, right? Or the new Western cluster. What do? We sell them raw rocks, put them in trucks, and put the raw rocks on the ship and send it away. Well, our people used to not do that. They used to smelt the iron and sell the bars. They were manufactured. They had more value. They added value. I'm talking about in the 16th and 15th century. This is documented. Europeans buying iron bars from our people. So this is a digression. Talk about lost craft. I don't know if people realize that their most ancient ancestors were doing this.
No, I don't
But
think we do. I don't think we realize that because right now is come and take it out from us and give us what social, how do you call it, fund?
yeah, social development funds. There's really no added value. Just take the raw rocks. But we used to not do that. We used to actually smelt the bars, and we would sell the bars at that market value. And this is, again, well documented by European traders. This is a sledge or kind of a traditional hammer. This would be a tool that would be used to form other tools. And this is something, again, because of the way our people are educated, they are repeating a process of doing things that goes way back, almost in a religious or reverent kind of way. Don't deviate from this. This is what your great, 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 great grandfather did, and his great, 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 great grandfather did, and this is the way it should be done.
Right.
And so you're looking at, something that might as well have been an artifact from 800 years ago, because there's no real change in the way it's done. And there was a lot of pride in doing things in the most traditional way. A lot of pride was taken in that. In the preservation of antiquity was something that was looked at with such reverence and homage. So in cultures that have reverence for their ancestors, preserving their traditions in this way is one of the ways you paid homage.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but these things were not just anybody did it. Those things will be done by maybe a set of family, and it'll pass down from one generation to the other.
Yeah,
Correct?
so right, to be a blacksmith is not something you judge of. I say I go to be blacksmith, right? So it is something that you are chosen to do. And a blacksmith is born. And even during wars and conflicts, one of the things that never happened is that blacksmiths were typically not sold into slavery. Blacksmiths were typically not killed in warfare. They were almost immune from danger because they were considered to be that valuable in their specialized craft. They felt that they hurt these people, so much would be lost.
Wow. Now in our modern day warfare, we go to even sacred places and kill people. But that's another story.
Nothing is sacred anymore. And then so this is not the same. This is an older photo of similar items that were forged by traditional blacksmiths. So you've got different tools here. You've got a dagger. You've got again, that sledge or hammer type device. You've got something that resembles a hoe. So these are different tools. These are different tools. And here you see someone again in the year 1928, so 96 years ago, using this. He's actually, what he's doing is he's using this tool to carve out a wooden handle for a knife. So he's using the tool to chip away the wood and carve a wooden handle for a knife.
Why are we not learning this? It's a mill farm cutter with blade.
Yeah, so I put a circle around the blade because it's such an old photo. It's a little bit, but yeah. So this is a type of hook you would probably use to cut rice. It's a hooked blade that you could probably go and you know, he cuts in the rice with.
And these are all our ancient crafts.
Yes,
they are
sir.
disappearing.
Mm-hmm. So many of these things were used up until the 1900s and are still in some ways used on the farms, but they've been replaced by imported equipment and things like that. But our people used to just be able to fix these things when they needed them. And then, of course, here we have more ancient ironworking techniques. Of course, these are spears. What I did not include here are the artisanal single barrel guns and rifles, which were also manufactured. They've been reverse engineered since the 1700s, and we had been manufacturing guns. But I didn't include that in this particular presentation. I think maybe in the future, Dr. Jacinth Carl, I'll ask him to come on and we can do one on ancient warfare and weaponry because he's an expert in that. But I didn't want to overshadow some of these other things. But this is also contemporary with the artisanal rifles and single barrel guns.
Ajay Wisa is raising a point here about. He said most of the Black American ancestors were very skilled. Like during slavery, were there people targeted to bring here, to cross so that they could introduce that same engineering and technology to the West?
So when we say this, we have to be careful because the transatlantic slave trade, nobody was going around and saying, oh, we're going to pick this person. And, blacksmiths were protected. Doesn't mean, and they were a protected class for spiritual reasons in our area. I'm speaking specifically of the Grain Coast. Doesn't mean that people who did ironwork were not sold into slavery. Absolutely not, because it became chaotic. And at some point, things deteriorated so bad that even royalty were sold into slavery, as we've discussed on this show many times. So it isn't necessarily so that people were particularly targeted for their skills. They were targeted for their labor. In the process, you end up with skilled people. So, for example, the South Carolina, Georgia, Seacoast Islands needed rice farmers. People who had been working on rice farms, laborers were targeted. Sierra Leone, Liberia, and all of the Gullah Geechee people in the Georgia Seacoast Islands and the Seacoast Islands of South Carolina and North Florida. But that being said, it is partly true. It is not an absolute truth. But imagine the amount of human beings that were taken out. So you're taking out not only physical labor, but also intellectual capacity and other things are being removed from the country in slavery. So, yeah. And here we have some of my favorite. These are sketches by a German explorer from actually this is from about 1906. And these are just different metal crafts that some are metal and wood, some are all, knives, daggers. Some of the drums had metal beads and other things worked in with the leather and the wood. But these are just different examples of crafts that incorporated bronze, I'm sorry, not bronze, brass, iron, and gold. They've got drums, headdresses, spears, jaggers, swords, all sorts of things.
And then my favorite game, Wara, it's right there.
Worry. Well, I don't know what the universal term is among our people, but all of the different ethnic groups have different words for these things. I've noticed that a lot of the universal words that we use are typically Vai. And there's a reason for that. But we'll talk about that another time. So these are anklets. These would have been worn around the ankle. And what I want to point out is these little round or circular things at the ends of these bracelets. What they would do with these is they would put a little iron ball and it would serve as a bell. It would serve as a bell. So if you are dancing, you are where your jewelry is an instrument. If you're trying to creep in the night, they will hear you. So these bells, also you can also know, where people are. So some of these were instruments of music and dance and song, and also to be able to track people. Here are some more examples. If you notice, Dennis, I'm not really focusing so much on ethnicity. And the last episode, I explained why. Many of these things are universally Liberian. So, for example, these are from among the Loma, right? This, not all of them. The one on the far left is from among the Loma. The one in the center is from among the Loma, and the one on the right is from among the Fer or Pella people. Well, you can find these exact things among the Clau, among the Glable. So it is not, so the reason I'm not saying this is because it doesn't really matter. Every one of our people can look at these things in its kinship. It's not like they say, oh, the Loma people fishing this thing, Crew people don't wear it. In fact, notoriously, our Cloud people have various kinds of bracelets and things like this. So these are things that are universally among our people for the most part. That's why I'm not hyper focused on ethnicity, because it's not really relevant to the craft.
I agree.
That funny thing, they can say, oh, this mask is a Loma mask, this one is a Mama mask, this one a Gil mask, this one a Crown mask. It's a joke. We have to challenge that. It doesn't make any sense, actually. So yeah, there's no such thing as a tribal mask in Liberia. It's just silly. You've got plural masks, you've got masks for different types of rituals and stuff, but it's not based on so-called tribe, where if you take this mask and you carry it back 100 years and you show it to Chief Wool and say, hey, Chief Wool, this is a Mod people mask, he'll look at you like, what are you talking about? We don't have masks to represent our whole ethnicity. But here are more examples, beautiful examples of these bracelets.
Wow.
These bracelets. And all of the ones around the ankles have bells. So as you walk, there's a sound.
Yeah.
And there's so many practical reasons. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So women scratch farm. Women, and these women that are in this thing, these are not women of extremely high status. These are women that would be laboring. They would be working. These are not the women that sat around and people did everything for them. So when you are going to scratch farm, you're going to go lay baskets to catch crawfish or to catch cold water fish, as we call it, like, right?
Mm.
As you're walking, these things are making noise and startling any potential predators or snakes or any type of hazards. So there's also a safety mechanism. You walk, the noise keeps other living things aware that of your presence, so you don't surprise something and put yourself in danger. A lot of reasons we are attacked by animals when we're even in modern times when you're hiking in the wilderness. If you don't make noise and you come across a mother bear, she might attack you because you look like you're creeping up on her and her cubs. So this was, besides it being beautiful, besides it making beautiful music when you're dancing, even when you're working, there's a practical safety mechanism built into this, making the noise as you walk, on the footpath. If there's a leopard somewhere, it can hear you coming from a distance and
And then
avoid you.
runs away.
Yeah. So it's just profoundly, I think, beautiful the way that it serves so many purposes, besides it looking really cool.
And it's like tight.
It seems so. It seems so. I mean, the one with the young woman wearing around her knees, that looks
Yeah.
tight. I don't know if the ones around the ankles were as tight as what I'm seeing. It. The ones around the knees, that's pure decoration. That is not a belt. It is the anklets I'm referring to when I'm talking about the bells and the noise making.
Yeah.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about textiles. We are going to talk about textiles. This is an ancient cotton gin from among our people. This is from the Buzi ethnic group, which we all know as Loma people in northern Liberia. So Loma people cotton gin. And this cotton gin would be exactly like this among the Pele, among the Mano, etc. Right? So this particular one just happens to be from among the Buzi, but if you were to go to Batala, you would see the same thing, right? So this is a universally shared type of culture. And so the cotton is used, they put it in there and they spin it into the thread. And that's what they use to weave these beautiful traditional Liberian cotton cloth that we like so much. And not that this particular, so the reason I know we still make traditional country cloth. Don't get me wrong. So I don't want people to say, oh, cause that we're
Like
not
the one
making
I'm
country
wearing.
cloth. Yeah, like the
Like the
one,
one I'm wearing.
yeah. But the thing is, though we still make the traditional country cloth, we don't make it necessarily in the same tradition. It would be difficult for you to find this type of cotton gin in modern Liberia. The other thing that's happening now too is that we're doing a lot of importation. We're importing a lot of materials. So to really find cotton cloth that's made in the most traditional way, even today, is very difficult. It's very difficult. It is in fact a vanishing craft. I saw a program with Eugene Fangon, all these people dressed up like chiefs and their town criers. I don't know who told them town crier can dress in chief's clothes. Journalists are not chiefs. Even if you had an LBS, you got to know your place. So they sit in there dressed in cheap clothes, but the material, the fabric was all imported, like Chinese stuff. They talk about, oh, we all got to wear traditional clothes to go to work. Like, you wearing imported, knock off country cloth gowns. It was very embarrassing. But I brought it up to illustrate the fact that a lot of this is disappearing. We're losing our crafts. We're losing the craft.
So again, this cotton gin, this is what you use, because I really have not seen. I saw that in Guinea. So this is where they put the cotton to produce the thread.
Yeah.
Not familiar with it.
Yeah. And so this is just an illustration, not illustration, but a photo to demonstrate women once they another way of spinning the cotton by hand. These are they women spinning the cotton by hand. And these are women of average status in the society. They are not nobility, they are not slaves, they're of average status in the society. I'm going to explain why textiles are a good way of knowing a person's status, how they dress in our traditions. So these women are dressed as the average women in this community would be dressed, right? They're spinning cotton, they have a skill. They typically would be self-determinant, nobody, bullying them and making them do all of the work. They probably have other people they can send to fetch water for themselves and things like that. But they're not nobility either. So people of basically average rank, because most of the cultures were highly stratified. Yeah. And the textile culture, the way the people wear their textiles depicts their status in the society very, very well. So we'll go to the next slide. This again is a young man who is learning this craft of actually weaving the strips that we then sew together to make the clothing, the fabric, right? So we first weave the strips and then we sew the strips together. So again, another young man which would be of average status in the society.
Yeah, he looks like my Uncle David.
You buy him. Yeah. So this young man is this photograph was taken among the Bai people of Cape Mount. And these are Buzi or Lama people. Buzi people, again, photos are mostly from 1929, some are from 1928, and so on, but this one's from 1929. These two men are, again, of average status in the community. They're wearing the woven country cloth that has been, the strips have been woven together. They can afford to probably own a few of these, but it's nothing too elaborate, right? It's just very basic. You're just an average guy, and this is how the typical person in a community would have dressed and made use of the textiles.
Cole, I'm curious why these pictures are 1929. What was going on? Somebody traveled and made this research?
Well, they're from different. These ones, this particular one, these two particular pictures are from Schwab, from George Schwab. And they're at the Peabody Museum in Harvard, and they were taken in 1929. A lot of these were taken in what is now Lofa Nimbabong. So, but George Schwab also traveled to Sino. He also traveled to other places as well.
Yeah.
Now, these are recent graduates of the Polo School in 1929. Schwab took this as well. And when people came from the traditional school, when they graduated, they were treated with respect and dignity. They were not treated like just average boys anymore. You come from the school, just how we do now when our kids graduate, we lay lapa for them to walk on, and we sing and dance for them. This is what that tradition comes from. And so these young men who would be average, they're given fabric, they're given textiles, they're given woven blankets, things, but these are things of value in a society because the craftsmanship, the workmanship that goes into weaving these things. And they were not only valuable to us, right? They were also valuable to the government on the coast. There was a huge market in Monrovia, in Buchanan, in Greenville, in Harper, and all these places for this woven country cloth. So it was a big deal. It was extremely valuable. So if you look at some of these young people, their mothers, their fathers, their grandmothers have adorned them in textiles and fabric. It is something important that they have done. So they're being rewarded in this way. So the textiles were extremely important. So here are average boys, but because they are graduates now, they're going to adorn them in these very beautiful textiles as a way of honoring them.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is the Liberia History Channel. We are discussing ancient crafts, the vanishing artistic traditions of Liberia. What we see on the screen there is a recent graduate of Polo.
Yeah.
And we got more of these slides, so we'll go a little faster now so we can have time for you to participate.
Yeah. So again, people of average status wearing our textiles. The reason I keep emphasizing this in the vanishing craft is because now everything goes. Everybody can dress like king. Everybody can dress like chief. There's no the meaning and the idea of status has been erased by the incorporation into the republic. We are no longer stratified in the way that we were historically. So anybody can wear anything, even if you're power palm wine tapper. You can go to school and you can get a job, and once you can afford to buy one gown, you can wear it and make yourself look like king. This did not happen before. Right? So in the tradition, you kind of how you dress measured your rank in the society. So these are more average people. This is an average woman wearing a very beautiful piece of cloth around her waist. Two very average men. I also want to point out these are Mono and Pele people in this picture. And the man on the far left with the dark colored country cloth is Mono. The man on the far right is Pele. The woman is Pele. Look at their hair. About what? This is 95 years ago, roughly, something like that. Look at their hair. We always say, oh, the man keeping hair, the man keeping hair, call your hair low. That is our culture. When you go far enough back, our men used to have hair on their head. The thing you see Dennis doing, that's a strange thing.
Exactly.
His ancestors would not have frowned upon him for having hair on his head. This is something that came with missionary education. Shave your head. Shave your head, This is not something our forefathers, it's not that we never had anybody wearing sabu hair, but the idea that keeping hair on your head was a taboo was not among us. Many of the men would do these types of braided styles, and that is a completely vanished craft. Because now when we do it, we act like it's a foreign thing that we're adapting. But here are men a few generations ago, uninfluenced by the West, with hair on their head. This is one of my favorite people, King Rapu. He's a Pele king. And he's drawn on the right here, and on the left, he's photographed. The photograph is from 1926. The drawing of him is from 1930, the painting, I should say. But isn't that cool? Yeah, so just again to show off the textiles and the intricate. So when you are powerful, how you dress and adorn yourself is different.
Right. It's not like the LBS people now who are supposed to be town crier dressing like.
Yeah, town crier dressing like. Can you imagine? So status. Here you are. These are some nobility. You're starting to see the difference, right? That now they've got the hats. They got a little bit of the Western influence. But all of them, you see the design of the fabric that they're wearing, right? Very, very It's not as simple,
Mm.
and they're usually adorned with some kind of, jewelry. It's not as simple. Some of them have hair, some of them don't. The taller Pape in the center there, the center left, his hair is low. Everybody else in the picture got hair on their head.
Yeah. Papa with
So
a low
then,
head.
anytime somebody tell you, "Oh, the bear, nothing American growing hair," show them this photo.
And even my photo in 11th grade, I had hair, I still have that photo.
Yeah.
Now,
So
this is how Chief Wulejabo in my town dressed, the one second from the left.
ah, and you see,
Yeah,
this is interesting because these are people in the area around Ganta, right? And
right.
we always think of the Glebo chiefs as the one with the hats, but all of our chiefs did this. The Glebo chiefs would have worn the full, tie the cloth around their waist and made that knot, and maybe
Yeah,
worn a jacket over it, right? Because they're on the coast and they have more Western influence. But at the same time, this is you can see the cultural continuity among our people.
yeah,
Right, you can see it's very difficult to know what ethnicity somebody is just simply by the way they dress, contrary to what modern Liberians try to say. These women are Maninka, I'm sorry, are Vai, but they could be Maninka, right? These are Vai women in Cape Mount. This
yeah,
is
yeah,
nobility. This is nobility.
yeah,
They're Muslim, um, and they're wealthy women, so they have a lot of fabric.
yeah,
They have a lot of cloth. They can tie their heads with it. They can drape it among themselves. These are not women that are going to be going in the field to go scratch farm. These are not women that are going to be going to go draw water, right? So there's a highly stratified, even work relationship. We have this idea that all women were working and all, no, we had a really big division of labor, and there were lines drawn. So these women would be sending people to do things for them. They could sit around and bluff all day and have to find hairstyles and, all those kinds of things and do other things. They had skills and crafts that they would do, but it didn't involve hard labor. So this would be nobility. And the next slide has more nobility. If you want to go to the next slide, Dennis. So these are women from 3 different ethnic groups, Gola, Bassa, and Krau.
I can tell the crowd.
An ancestor of MC Cairo. She bluffing. But so these are 3 noble women in those 3 ethnic groups. Again, these are not laborers. These are not women that are going to be going to go scratch farm. These are women that are going to be, taken care of and given instructions and pampered. And you can see, look at the Bassa woman in the center with all of that elaborate fabric. Same thing with the Gola one on the left. Our crowd sister there, she
She
bluffing with
kill
all the jewelry and everything else. You can't tell her anything.
it. You can see it in the face and the attitude.
Exactly. So we'll go on to the next. This is again more textiles. This is a young Vai woman. A young Vai woman, and look at the beautiful layers. So underneath, which is down by her knees going to her feet, is one layer of fabric, which is a tie-dye, cotton tie-dye. Because now you're getting the Vai Mendi culture, right? And then over there is the woven fabric from the north. So she's got money. She has money, and she's not, this is not somebody who is on a rice farm. That's somebody's daughter there.
Yeah.
And then this last textile, this one is very ancient. This is one that was unfortunately removed from a sacred place. It was something that was worn by a very important king in the 19th century, sometime in the 1800s, and his gown was kept in a sacred house. And these patterns. These patterns are found among Mono, Pele, Kisi, Loma, but this particular gown, these are patterns are found among the Polo or Poro people, as we say, how we pronounce it now that we've become anglicized. But the Polo
Yeah.
people would wear these symbols, and so so it's formerly worn by a Mono. They say chief, but it would have been a king because we at that time we didn't have the introduction of the whole paramount chief system, so it would have been an actual king, not a chief, as Schwab says here. And then we also have textiles that are Liberian in tradition, which is the quilt. And it is something that was brought back by repatriates. And then there's a special way that we produce quilts in Liberia that's very unique to us. And Liberia is renowned for our quilting system. So our repatriated people from the southern states and also the northeastern United States have brought in these beautiful textiles as well that are very unique to Liberia. And unfortunately, even that is disappearing, the artwork of making quilts. Here you have a President Talbert presenting a quilt to Kennedy, to JFK. I think when he was vice president, presenting quilt to JFK in Washington, D.C. But I added this to the tradition because this is also a Liberian tradition that's vanishing. In the 1800s, late 1800s, most Liberian homes in the coastal towns and cities would have had quilts on their beds, handmade by the grandmothers, the aunties, and stuff like that. And even that craft is also disappearing and vanishing.
Oh.
So engineering, I'm going to do one on engineering and architecture next episode, so you can skip over this. This should have been actually removed. But then I took this whole section, I'm going to push it to another one just so this show doesn't become very long and boring. So just know that we're going to do a different episode on engineering and architecture. But this is woodwork. This is a door that was somewhere near a town called Woozy, a very ancient door, near a town called Woozy. This photograph was taken in 1928, but the door at the time it was photographed was probably 80 to 100 years old. So this is an ancient woodwork door that was done, and it was a door to a sacred place. And they call it a boozy door, but boozy, as we know, refers to our Loma people. And then here are some wooden ritual spoons. So typically used to pour libations and give offerings.
Right. This thing about water, libation and baptism, same thing, right?
Yes, exactly. So ancient woodworks, would have been the same kind of tradition. Powerful. And then we'll go to the next one. So really quickly, we're gonna get into some traps. So I didn't want to spend this. I love this. This is I like everything we're doing, but this is what's called a weighted log trap. It's for large game. You could go ahead and read, Dennis, but this is how they will catch big animals.
The weighted log trap for large game and the weighted billet for small game seem to be more frequently used in the north, at least at present, than in the southeast. The best example of this type is made especially for lepers, like the suspension bridge. It is made by the main society. The public does not see it until it is finished.
Yeah. So the engineering part was, when we do it next week, we'll focus on the suspension bridge. In fact, I'd like to have Cici Goya join me on that. I like how he talked about the suspension bridge when he was talking about mathematics. But the reason I kept that there, this is a direct quote from George Schwab. The secrecy around forming these things. They will go somewhere and they will build this trap and you could not see how they were doing it. right? Because this is all ritual. This is all reverence to an ancient tradition. So that's something you just waste outside, like how called can just kind of waste history outside. Knowledge was sacred and was kept to their chests. That was the tradition. And so unfortunately, when those people die, if there's some catastrophe like war or some conflict and they die, they're not able to pass it on, it's lost forever. I've traveled the length and breadth of Liberia when I worked with the Land Authority of Land Commission at the time, and I've never seen anything like this. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe they were there, they didn't show it to me, but I would notice it when I went in the interior. But no, I never saw this kind of, and it's a huge trap. It was like 15 feet long. So they would use a huge log, and it was just, you could see it was magnificent. You can go to the next slide. It's going to show the side view of a diagram of the side of the trap. So you see it, and again, 15 feet long. This could trap, a group of human beings, let alone an animal. So they would put bait in there, and once the animal went in, it would trigger the lever, and then that's it. You just in there, you're an angry leopard, and you can't get out. And if these people made any mistake with how they did this trap and that leopard got outside, they finished. So it was something they had to really know how to do. This is not one of those things where you can just get up. And I see that people do it, I can't do it. That would be the end of you. So knowledge was not something the things we do today, where anybody can just jump up and say they can do anything, that's not how it used to be. Palm wine tapper couldn't just jump up and say, I know how to top palm wine, therefore I can make leopard trap.
Yeah.
That would be the end of him. People knew their area. They knew what they didn't know. So go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, so that's this one you were explaining. When the leopard steps into it, it releases a peg trigger attached to one end of the heavy cord. The other end of the cord is fastened to the long arms of two levers, which are supported in notched or forked posts. The short end of each lever holds up a loop of the stout cable of vines by which the weighted log is suspended. When the peg trigger is released by the weight of the animal on the panel, the levers fly up and the log and its weight fall upon the and crush the animal below. Yes. And Carl, let me admit I didn't do this one, but there's the one I did, for kind of not too large animals, it will grab it by the leg. Because you dug a hole.
Yeah, so for like tapadu, you want to catch groundhog and stuff.
We talk about deer and those things.
Oh, deer. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you dig a hole. So when it triggers, it's going to grab the deer by the leg, not the neck.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
But it's the same concept, but it won't come and fall. Nothing will fall on it. And then we just go and chop it off for soup.
Okay.
So, still explaining this. You can see the picture, the lever to the short ends of which the
you don't have to read out. I was just showing the diagram for people to see. I mean, this is something that university or high school students, not university, but high school students could do.
Yeah.
Like create a log trap. Hopefully they don't get crushed by the log, but just to demonstrate, for a science project, this is engineering.
Yeah.
This is engineering. This is our ancient engineering and all of these mechanisms. This is not simplicity. This is complex engineering that's going on here. Physics and all involved. So we'll go to I know it's getting late, but this is a noose trap. And this was used to trap like mice, cockatoo, you want to get one groundhog, those smaller mammals and animals that we, what we call bushmeat, right? And even small deer. You can even get one Foletonga or the Dukier deer, what we call Foletonga. You can get those with these kind of traps as well. Again, the mechanism in which that works. Here is an example of leopards that were caught in the trap. The backs would have been broken by the log. rendering them, immobile. Then you can be brave now and go tie it and carry it to the town. You big hero.
Oh yeah, and people who hunted lepers, these are special hunters, right? They're not lepers and elephant hunter are just set
Yeah,
aside.
they're not just anybody.
Oh,
And they didn't catch, yeah, they're not, it's not just anybody. And even as they pointed out, the traps, even how they set them is information that was sacred. It was kept to their chest. I want to point out and give reverence to this great ancestor, King Tapi of Tapi Town, one Da ancestor who is the tall man who is in the photograph here. This is King Tapi of Tapi Town. And the leopard, when they brought the leopard to town, they laid it in front of him. So it's not just anybody standing here in this faded photo. This was one of our great warrior kings. And this is another type of trap mechanism. And if you're out there watching, if you've ever seen any of these in your lifetime, say so. My understanding is they don't do these anymore. That this has completely been lost.
and that's why we say the vanished artistic traditions. All these
Yeah,
are vanished.
vanishing and in the process of vanishing, exactly. So these types of traps that you see here, this type of engineering is lost to us, unfortunately. Oh, you can skip the next slide. I was supposed to have removed that. And then the very last one, the last slide there. One of the vanishing crafts that I've noticed is
Before you go ahead, somebody have seen those traps.
Yeah, still go to the next slide. The one you're showing is an error. Someone said, "Oh, Priscilla, that's great. I haven't." And my understanding is that maybe you've seen something similar. You could call in and let us know. But my understanding is that they don't do those traps any longer. And this is something else that has changed. The scarification of our when people go into the traditional schools, they no longer come out with these elaborate designs. So even that has changed. Now people come out and they don't look much different from the rest of us. Traditionally, people would come out with these kind of elaborate markings on the chest and their back. Very, very profoundly beautiful tattoos or skin perforations. And it gives an account of how it was done. How they would use the small hooks. This isn't unique to Liberia. It's not unique to polo. We do see this happening in Nigeria and Ghana and different places too. The same raised scars. It's a very ancient thing, and it's very common not only in West Africa but in Central Africa and East Africa. So to show you how old this tradition is, it is extremely old because you have the same using the hooks and the raising the skin. You can find that in South Sudan. You can find that in Western Ethiopia. You find that all over the place.
And so if you want to be part of the discussion, ask questions, share, your experience, please call the number on the screen, 605-313-6004. The code is 791403#. Again, 605-313-6004. The code is 791403#. Call us and let us know, what you make of the ancient craft, the vanishing trades and artistic traditions of Liberia. What's your take? You think you can, get some? If you've seen some, call and share your experience. And if you use some, and if you even can set the trap or make a kinja like me, you can just give us a call and let's discuss it. So what do we do now? These are vanishing. How do we preserve them? What can be done?
I think what we're doing now, right? The show, bringing the awareness. I think there are a lot of things that are documented, even though they're forgotten in practice, because they're documented, they can be resurrected. I don't want to resurrect everything here. I don't think the scarification process is considered safe any longer. But just knowing about it is beautiful. And I think also being able to do these traps and redo some of these things, have a high school project, see if the kids can come up and engineer a floating bridge. All of these things that are vanishing, that have not yet completely vanished, but can be taught. Incorporating some of those traditions into our education system, I think, will give young people a very profound sense of belonging, connecting them to their roots and heritage.
Yeah. And maybe that will provide solution for the flooding.
Sure, Dennis.
Yes, I mean
No,
look at
the solution to the flooding is to stop getting rid of the natural floodplains and buffers and backfilling them and doing ignorant things that,
the point I'm making, our people knew that.
Yeah, our people definitely knew that, for example, Bali Island, they knew nobody has ever lived there because they know what it is.
Yeah.
Nature science is a observable phenomenon. If you pay attention, our people didn't have smartphones, so they paid attention to the stuff around them. It's not rocket science, it's natural science. So you just observe. And if you have a brain in your head, you say, oh, when a place flood, the area can suck up all the water. Let's leave it there, because when we damage it, when the place flood, the water won't have anywhere to go. It's common, just observing your environment is what our ancestors did, and that's how they stayed alive long enough to bring us into being.
Yeah.
We're not as sharp as they were. Clearly.
Yeah. Let me few comments here. Emmanuel Williams said we need to reach out to our people in the villages, towns, and counties for the informal and non-formal education.
I find that interesting that Emmanuel thinks that people in the villages and towns know any more than the people in the city. I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they do. I don't know when the last time Emmanuel been in a village, but the people get video club, all kind of things. They're not thinking about that.
Somebody, I have my marking on my back. Today, our young people want smartphones. Our young men want smartphones. And I shared Priscilla earlier. She said those traps, she's seen them.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Emmanuel also said, everywhere, thanks for this historical formal education. Martha said, Africans are really talented when it comes to these arts and crafts.
Absolutely.
Anthony, West African blacksmith captured during the Mafa created the famous ironworks in New Orleans, French Quarters. He continued, most of our black ancestors were very skilled. Most of Africa was very skilled. That's why Europeans decided to steal Africans and bring them to America. Yeah. Asma Aru Sandieta, the polo was a space to train young men. And Anthony wanted to say, focus on liberal peace and blessing to Dennis Job, my brother and sister called family. Peace to you, my brother, as well. Well, we're going to have a call. Let me set up the phone line. We have callers lining up already.
Okay.
So, Dr. Kula wants to hear about the bridge. We'll do engineering later.
He wants to hear about the what?
He said, what's about the bridge?
Oh, yeah. We're going to do the engineering and architecture has to be a show all by itself. I will fall asleep and so will you. So we'll do a separate one about engineering and architecture. So the floating bridge, the suspension bridge that people call monkey bridge, all those things, and these things are so ancient. They're found all over the continent, and so these things are ancient, ancient, ancient technologies. You will see it in Burkina Faso. You will see it in Nigeria. You'll see it in Ghana. You'll see it in Cameroon, in some version or another. So it has to date back to a time that's so old it goes back to our common origin. So imagine, we're talking about probably 10,000 plus years. It's amazing. Why wouldn't we want to preserve those techniques? It's the lack of preserving techniques is why modern humans are still knocking their heads wondering how the pyramids were built, because we let things go.
Yeah. Let me
And
bring on our callers now. We have one who is calling from Edmonton in Canada. Caller, your name.
Yes. Hello, how are you, Danny?
Good. Your name and where you calling from?
Yes. My name is Thomas Ubumbe. I'm calling from Edmonton.
Oh,
Canada.
Thomas, are you Canada?
Yeah, hello, you Canada. How are you doing?
Isa, I'm good. Thanks for calling.
Thank you to our sister in the studio with the show. I've been following. I'm doing some work in the office and following the show. That's very interesting. Some of the things that you are showing I can relate to. Many of them, not everything, for sure, I have to admit. I grew up in the interior and I remember about the load, the specific one that I really have fun with is the load carrying stuff. I don't even know how it's called, but I know how we used to go in the deep forest and we dig yams, just exactly as you explained. Where you go, sometimes you go in the forest where there's nothing around you, and you happen to find good fruit or something you bring to town. You have to be that. How are you going to bring it to town? So what you said is exactly what we used to do. Young boys would go around, and then we find something very good fruit that's not around, or cassava. Some of these white cassava or yam that will grow in the forest. We just dig it out. Now, how are we going to bring it? We just have to cut the palm touches, pour it really nice, and we'll bundle those things up because our journey will come to town. And sometimes we'll take that small animal and add it on top, and we'll get to town. Guess what? We are the big boys in the town that time. So it's a very good memory that you were just sharing.
That's nice.
No, that's nice. That's what we want. When we're doing the show, you have an experience, you come and share it.
Yes,
because what you are saying will be passed on to the next generation. So it's very important that we get this kind of thing. Thank you so much for
Thanks
calling.
for sharing that. That was good.
All right.
No problem.
Okay, let me bring up Madison Camus. Madison, you're live.
Hey, how you doing? Been a long time. How are you?
I'm well. How are you too?
Yeah, thank you. I'm okay. Nice again to be on this show, especially on the Liberia History channel. And even though I didn't start the show from the beginning, but from his comments that I read, I think it's all about art and craft. So I just want to say again, thanks to Cisco for always bringing this issue out and bringing it to our attention, especially for our history in our country, Liberia. But there's one thing, I don't know if I'm right in this situation. I don't know if we Liberians, are we really the kind of people that really put our culture, or are we the kind of people that just, slap our own culture and adapt to other people's culture and even make it more permanent in our own culture? Because the reason I ask the question, many a time I see we ask material, the beads and stuff that people wear, and I come to realize that most weddings that goes on in Liberia or probably outside Liberia and with Liberian background, they seem to always connect to other culture, like decoration, beads and other stuff like that. So my concern is that our question could be, are we really the kind of people that adapt to other people's culture and just forget about our own and just forget about it? Is there any way you can help me understand that? Because I find it hard to really understand.
You cannot follow something that you were not taught, that was not passed down to you. So it's not that people have been given something and they're throwing it away. People are grasping at straws because they were given Western education and they value that above other things. And the way Christianity is introduced to Africa is in a way that demeans or shames traditional African practices. So when people, go to school, they go to church, you no longer, I'm wearing this necklace, what we call gamo seeds or cowrie shells. I remember 2011, I had gone to Ghana. I went to Accra Art Center. I bought gamo seed earrings and a necklace, and I came to work that following Monday when I got back. And everybody in the NTA camp was like, "Oh, that woman you wish she now go get gamo seed," So people think that our traditional traditional African things are evil. Unfortunately, it's sad. So it's not that they think that culture is bad. Is really why it's ignored. And the reason you see them emulating Nigerian culture is because Nigeria, for God's sakes, is 1/5 of the population of the continent of Africa. It is the most profoundly influential culture in Africa. And with all of their movies and the pop culture, the music. So when Liberians who've been taught that their traditions are evil want to be African, the first thing they see is Igbo, Yoruba. Those are massive ethnic groups. There's more Yoruba people than Liberians and Guineans combined. So, of course, we're going to copy and imitate the things that we see in abundance. And it's not just now. It's been happening since the 70s, the musical influence of high life and all these things from the larger countries. But I think the way to remedy that is to teach it and to take the stigma of Liberian culture away. Destigmatize our heritage. And nobody's going to do that for us. We got to do it for ourselves.
Thank you, Madison. Well, there you have it. We don't have any more colors, so we can wrap up, Carl.
Yeah. So I think ending on Madison's question was a good note. Of course, we want to destigmatize our culture. We want to destigmatize these things and put them in the rightful place as a heritage, something we should be proud of. There's also a lot of uniqueness in Liberia that if we allow it to slip through our fingers, some of these things also have economic value, right? Yeah. If we can preserve these things. We talk about tourism. We talk about, we want to do tourism. But when you go to Kenenja, when you go to Mamba Point, around the U.S. Embassy, you want to buy something, some crafts. Most of the crafts are from China. They're just plastic or cheap wooden things that are mass produced. People just walking in the street the way they hawk don't go flat, right? So we're not even making things of value, of substance anymore. So if we get back to doing some of the ironworks and get back to some of these things have economic value and artistic value. Learn how to do some of these things. You can, and they have more, somebody will come. If you make a brass crew bracelet, bell bracelet, the traditional way, you can sell that for more than these guys who are hawking these fake beads around can sell the whole market.
Yeah. Call, I have one last caller.
Okay.
Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Hey, this is Sister Goya, my sister, the educator. Go.
How you doing, brother?
I am in awe of you. I always say that. Thank you for always educating our people. I may not agree with you 100%. We differ sometimes, but it is the intellectualism that you bring to the discussion that elevates all of us all. And I've been watching the show. Sorry, I left to go take care of my baby, and then you were calling, and then I got in, and it was after calling time. But I just wanted to say that what a lot of our people have forgotten is that in history, the victors writes the narrative. But that doesn't mean that the losers or the victims don't get to have a say. And so it is okay to disagree, but in order to disagree, we first have to understand what is the basis of our disagreement. Like you and I had a back and forth one time, and I talked about the likes of Matilda Newport, and you talk about what was her name? What's Matilda's maiden name? You corrected me on that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we talked about that. And the idea is that I learn from you as much as I can impact you. And so I just want to call out here to say that I am still Liberian. I'm still a native. I know my native stock has some questionable practices, and I know our brothers and sisters who return from captivity also have some questionable practices. The way to go forward is not to demonize any one of those, is to put it forth for our new generation to learn and make informed decisions without blaming one group, but learning from the mistakes from the other groups. So I just want to come out here and say, Dennis, my brother, from Focus on Liberia, thank you so much for the education. And my sister, Kao, I'm always in awe of you. You are a gem. You are a rare gem, and I appreciate the show tonight.
Thank you so much. I had, before you go, I had said that I wanted you to assist us, if you can, if you have time, with the next follow-up to this episode, where we're going to be talking about the engineering, the traditional engineering and architecture of Liberia. And the reason I wanted to invite you to join is because you had said something so profound about our suspension bridges. And, but that's up to you. If you can't join, at least, listen to the show and call in.
Dennis, no, I won't run away from such an invite, and especially coming from you. I have to use the CDC people with a revolutionary mandate. I will you gotta say South Cole when I say
revolutionary mandate.
Pagu is strong. Pagu is strong. When you're talking about the Kenya, and I'm looking at the Kenya that people, I want people planted those things, by the way, not to take the show too long, and we saw cola nuts in those things. That is an engineering marvel. Like it is a mathematical, it's patterns. Math is just pattern. When people are braiding, they're planting those things, there are patterns. So absolutely, coming to talk about a suspension bridge that we derogatively refer to.
The floating bridge, the way we did our thatch roofs, the tall pointed thatch roofs in the north, why they were built that way, aerodynamically designed for wind and rain and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about all of it.
Thank you.
And even when you talk about when you go in the villages and you look at how the villages are laid out, there is a math professor right now in Germany. Him and I are working on a project that they were looking at these mathematical marvels, and they're looking at how people lay out cities. And he realized that the way people lay out cities is how our Asian Africans live. We're working on that project to tell our people that when you go in any village, you see the town square. You see, a hut is a hut that serves as a place where people keep grains, and then you got a house where people live in, and they got a kitchen, and it goes around a circle. And neither one of those villages are congested. Monrovia is congested because it didn't follow our native way of laying out cities. So absolutely, I'll come on. We can talk about the math all day. I just want to say I honor you, my sister. You are a rare gem. So thank you so much for everything you bring to our community.
Thank you. And by the way, Cisse is FOL education analyst.
Yeah, and he's going to take up the revolutionary mandate to add the mathematics to our engineering and architecture episode. So our ancient engineering and architectural crafts, which are also vanishing. So it'll be part 2 of the vanishing process. The next one is we're just gonna focus on those. And I do want to say when I talk about traditional Liberian architecture and engineering, I'm also talking about the architecture of repatriated people from Congo Basin and North America as well. And when we talk about the anyway, let me not get too much into it. We'll have the episode. Just come and watch. It's going to be very interesting. He talked about the city layouts. We had the way Monrovia was laid out, Greenville, Sino. There's some genius behind that as well. We've deviated from it, but all of those things were planned in a certain manner.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Call, for tonight. I want to thank our viewers for watching. Join us next this Saturday. I mean, we didn't have it show this Saturday at 7:30 for the Library History Channel. We're going to be talking about engineering, architecture, and the mathematics behind all those things. Cisse call it mathematics marvels. I'm looking forward to that, and we don't want you to miss it. Until then, we're going to close with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night, and God bless you.
Thank you, guys.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Israel, USA, all we want. Liberia, oh. Israel, USA, all we want. Liberia, Liberia.